Good morning, everyone. My name is Louise. I'm one of the learning officers here at the International Bomber Command Centre. And it is wonderful to welcome you, all of you here this morning. And I'd like to say a particular welcome to all those pupils from Bishop's King C.of.E. School, St John's Primary Academy, Navenby C.of.E. School, Hayington Millfield Academy, Waddington All Saints and Potterhamworth C.of.E. School. And of course, we'd also like to welcome everybody who is watching in their classrooms, at home, or in their assembly halls, another 800 of you. So a big welcome to you as well. I'd also like to say a thank you and welcome to RAF Padre Chris Lawrence, who will be speaking to us later, and also to Dave Densham from the Royal British Legion, who is our standard bearer for today. Today, we are here, of course, to mark Remembrance Day. This day has been observed since 1919 to remember the end to fighting in the First World War on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. As I'm sure many of you already know, and I can see many of you around me this morning wearing poppies or having poppies on your wreath. The poppy has been a symbol now for 100 years of Remembrance Day, and it reminds us of the poppies that grew on the battlefields at the end of fighting in the First World War. So we are, of course, here today to remember all those that were lost in the First World War, but we also remember those who were lost in the Second World War and the many conflicts that have happened since then. We are here today to honour our armed forces. Some of you may have parents who are in the armed forces, and we honour them particularly today. And we also remember all those who sacrificed their lives or who died as a result of the bombing raids and the other effects of war. So civilians, people like you and me, who died due to the effects of war. Today, as you look around you, perhaps you can glance to the side of you and behind of you, you will see you are surrounded by names. There are close to 58,000 names on our memorial walls, and they record the names of people who served in or who supported Bomber Command, mainly during the Second World War and some slightly later. Later on in the service, all of you are going to be given the opportunity to read a biography. So the real story of somebody who is named on one of our walls, and you'll have the chance to read about their life and to go and honour them by placing a poppy next to their name. So that's a really special part of our service later on. But as we stand here, it's quite hard to imagine, isn't it? 58,000 people. Okay, it's such a big number, it's hard to imagine. Can anybody put their hand up and tell me if they have seen, perhaps on the television, or maybe have even been to the O2 Arena in London? Oh, so a few hands going up. Maybe you've seen a music concert there, or perhaps you've been lucky enough to go. Well, the O2 Arena, which is massive, holds about 20,000 people. So if you imagine in your mind's eye the O2 Arena filled not once or twice, but nearly 3 times with real, living, breathing people, just like you and just like me. And that's how many people are remembered on the walls that you stand between today. It's so huge, isn't it? It's hard to get our head around. These young men and women were often teenagers, so perhaps not much older than your siblings or cousins, or in their early 20s, and they were volunteers. They all signed up to serve in Bomber Command or support Bomber Command as a volunteer. Nobody made them do it. And behind every single name that is around you, there is a story. They were a real person, just like you and me. One particular story, which we often talk to school groups about is about the 37 boys included on our walls who were actually under 18 when they were lost in World War II. Perhaps a similar age, as I said, to your sisters or brothers or cousins. If they were with us today, they might have been doing their GCSEs or their A-levels, so not very old. 3 of these young men, the first one Peter Bond, who was just 14, and Desmond Fox and Ernest Hall, who was 17, were members of the Chapel on Lifrith Air Cadets. So some of you may know people or have family members in Air Cadets today. Those boys had worked really hard in the 1940s, raising money to actually build a Lancaster bomber, a bit like the aircraft you saw on the statue as you arrived today. And the aircraft, which was going to be stationed at Elston Woods, they raised the money for it, and as a reward, they were actually going to be given a flight in the Lancaster bomber. And you can imagine how excited they would have been. However, this is just one of the very sad stories on our walls. Sadly, during the flight, there was a problem and the aircraft span and crash landed, and all those 3 young boys were actually killed. They had a joint funeral of about 800 people with full military honours. So that's just one snippet, if you like, one real story behind the names that you see around you on the walls. So it's our job here at the International Bomber Command Centre to recognise and remember people like those 3 young men. But also, we remember those that suffered, as we said earlier, as victims in the bombing raids. Perhaps you've talked about the Blitz in school when you've studied the Second World War, and the many people that died in London during the Blitz. And also in other cities, such as Dresden in Germany, we also remember those who were lost. It's important to recognise that Remembrance Day is not about glorifying war. For all sides involved in war, war brings loss and suffering. And that's why the final part of our sort of mission and vision here at the IBCC is about reconciliation. If you haven't come across that word, reconciliation, then it simply means to bring back together individuals or countries or parties who've had a disagreement. And as we said, our centre hopes that here today, as you come and learn about the past and as you come to hear about those real stories, that you will be the generation or a generation who actually works for peace and reconciliation in the future. As part of our remembrance events, we've actually had a poetry competition, and I'd like to say thank you to all those people, many of you here today, who entered a poem into the competition. We had some wonderful entries. But this morning we're going to hear a poem, one of the winning poems, written by Toby from Navenby Primary School, called I Must Remember. And one of the reasons that Toby's poem stood out to me was that it actually talks about learning from the past. It talks about young people learning from the past in order to help things in the future. And that is something that is very close to all of our hearts here at the International Bomber Command Centre. So I would just like to ask now Toby to come up, please, to read to us his wonderful poem.
I must remember, so I am told, but it is hard as I'm not very old. I am told of terrible war stories that happened long ago, of thousands of innocent men who fought their foe, fighting for their country with great pride, yet sadly so many of them died. I must remember, so I am told, but it is hard as I'm not very old. I am told of bombs that attacked many cities and towns, homes destroyed, burnt to the very grounds, people injured, terrified with fear, the sounds of gunfire and screams, forever a memory in their ear. I must remember, so I am told, but it is hard, as I'm not very old. I am told that these terrible wars end after many years, however, not for the families' heartbroken tears. For the love of the people lost, war is not at any cost. I must remember, so I am told, for one day I too will grow old, And if my generation learn from the past, no more wars will be cast.
Thank you, Toby. That was absolutely lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I must remember this morning is all about remembering. And we're going to do our Act of Remembrance in just a moment. But just a little practice with you. When I say the words, we will remember them, can you repeat after me, we will remember them? Should we practice that? We're good at this, aren't we? We will remember them.
We will remember them.
I think we can do it just slightly louder than that. We're not going to shout this out, we're going to be dignified, but we're going to say it in a strong, confident way. Should we have another practice? We will remember them.
We will remember them.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. So this is the Act of Remembrance. Let us remember before God and commend to his sure keeping those who have served in the Royal Navy, the Army and the Royal Air Force, those who have died for their country, those whom we knew and whose memory we treasure, those who have lived and died in service of mankind. They shall grow old, not as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Thank you. Well done. When you go home, tell them of us and say, for your tomorrow we gave our today. Thank you. Well done for standing so still during those 2 minutes. And thank you for coming along today. Thank you for inviting me. So I'm Padre Chris, and my job is I work down at Royal Air Force Cranwell, which is where we train our future officers for the Royal Air Force. I'm a bit like a vicar you might find in one of your parish churches, but most of my work is caring for people in the Air Force in times of need. An important part of what we do is remembering, like we do today, commemorating the past. Wherever we are around the world, at 11 o'clock on the 11th November, we will lead an act of remembrance. So whether that's in Afghanistan or the Falklands or around the Middle East or on my home stations in Lincolnshire, wherever I am, I'll lead one of these services. I'm very proud to be able to do this. And for me, at least, it's all about my memories. And I think memories are sometimes good, they're sometimes not so good, sometimes a bit difficult. But I think our memories make us who we are, which is why I thought we had the poem, I Must Remember, was so absolutely brilliant and so fitted with today. So I wanted to very quickly tell you some of my memories. Some of my memories are my own, but many are handed down to me through the family. I had a mother who spent her childhood on a dairy farm during the Second World War, and had uncles that served in the Air Force after the Second World War, but for many, many years. They told me about their adventures around the world, from doing search and rescue in the Libyan desert to sailing across the Atlantic. And as a schoolboy growing up in England, I thought their stories were amazing and inspiring. And I thank them for the memories of courage and bravery and determination they've passed down. But one other memory that I have that has passed to me was of my grandfather, who served as a professional soldier before the Second World War and during the war. He served in the jungle of the Far East. And sadly, he didn't return from the war. He died out there. And so that's a bit of a sad memory for me. So my memories are a mix of excitement and sad ones that have been passed down to us. And I think this day sums that up. Many people that work here will have really fond memories of often a full career serving in the Air Force. And they'll be able to talk about all the different places they went and how important it was. But many of us also have those sad memories of people that we've lost, either our family or our friends. We've talked about how all this started. Even before the Royal Air Force started at the end of the First World War, people were thinking, how will we remember this? The hope that the First World War would be a war to end all wars, but sadly it wasn't. It followed by the Second World War, which our Bomber Command here, Memorial, is all about. And then even after that, the wars didn't stop. And people thought it was very important to remember every year. Some of my memories as well of those passed down to me through my family, of my own operational tour in Afghanistan 12 years ago, which I realise, standing here with you all today for the first time, is officially history. I think if it's older than you, that makes it history, doesn't it? So that means I'm part of history now. Those campaigns of Afghanistan and Iraq that were happening when I first joined the Air Force. And so my memories of that are kind of different. People that I knew that died there. They all make us who we are. Now, when I think of remembering, it's a time of year for remembering, I think of the word, and I think of it as remember, making someone a member again. And when we remember, we bring people back into our family, maybe grandparents or great-grandparents that aren't with us anymore. And as we remember those people that are important to our families and our schools, maybe in our communities, it reminds us of who we are in a really important way. The things that we've inherited from them, the things that make us who we are. So today, we give thanks for all those memories, maybe with gladness for memories of bravery and courage and service, and maybe a little bit of sadness for loss of people that gave up their lives in sacrifice through the war. So that's what we're about today. Now, we're very lucky with the poetry competition. We're going to have one more poem now, and I'd like to invite Jess to come up and read to us. Thank you very much, Jess.
Man and boy in trenches deep, whilst at home their spouses weep, frightened, terrified of what's to come, listening to the beat of the drum, waiting for the whistle to blow, over the top they must go, charging, yelling, gunshots fly, their only wish is not to die. Not this day, not like this, hoping all the bullets miss, sadly for many this wasn't the way, this was to be their last day. Now the fields are quiet and still, a lonely soldier stands on a hill, many of his friends now laid to rest, remembered by the poppy proudly on its chest.
Thank you, Jess, from Hayington Milford Primary School. That was wonderful. So we come to the end of our, or towards the end of our service now, and the final act of remembrance is to lay wreaths, which have been made by all of you. I can see some beautiful wreaths from all the different schools. Well, we got this far without the rain, but we're going to carry on. And the final part of our remembrance event here this morning, as I mentioned earlier, is for you to lay some poppies. And when you place that poppy next to their name, just think of them and their family as you do that.